All right, perfect. So a little bit of background about me. I am not in tech at all. So career services and career development is my passion. I have actually been in career services for about 7 years in the higher education sphere. Currently, I am in organizational development, which nobody knows what I do, which I'm sure y'all experience that in the tech world as well. But just in a snapshot, that's really making sure that an organization is fortified in all the ways that it needs to be. So, whether that's identifying gaps in knowledge sets in the workforce and then presenting solutions on how to overcome those gaps, or if it's looking at who do we have now in these leadership positions and how do we retrofit them in order to be current on modern trends in terms of leadership and managing and communication. So that is where I spend all of my time when I am getting paid. So let's talk a little bit about cover letters. And Christine and Patrick already touched on two really important parts. First one is quality over quantity. Cover letters, they're just an extra step that you have to go through in order to check off the box of, am I ready to submit my application for this position? Yes, it does take time. And it can seem pointless because not a lot of people pay attention or really find value in cover letters, but the people that do really place a lot of value on that. So essentially, a cover letter is telling this person why you should care more or why they should care more about you as a candidate over other people. And because not everybody writes a cover letter when they're submitting an application, you're already setting yourself apart from everybody else in the fray that is submitting applications. The average applicants that are received for one job posting is 200 people. So if you can put yourself in a different category and really talk about your points of differentiation, you are making that recruiter, that hiring manager's job easier. So I know that everybody thinks that, oh, somebody's going to look at my resume line by line and they're going to see all of this amazing experience that I have. They're not doing that. They're actually looking for ways to say no to you as an applicant before they're looking for ways to say yes. And cover letters is a great way for them to put you in that category of, okay, might say yes to this person. I'm going to go through and get the rest of my nose done, and then I'll go back and give them a little bit more attention. All right. So, and then Patrick also mentioned that experience part. It's very hard to break into an industry that you don't have any experience in terms of what they typically want, whether that's that 3 to 5 years experience in a certain field with certain software products or certain processes. When you take the time to really invest in writing your cover letter, you are telling them how you do have that experience. It may not be specifically worded in the ways that they're asking, but you have the mind maps, the mental models, you understand how these processes work, and you can translate that to what they need in that position. All right, so this is like the standard job search flow. You get cranky at your current job, or you decide that there's no growth opportunities, or you're just ready for a change. So you get super excited, you harness that energy into updating your resume. You update it with your current job, what you're doing, what you've done, and then you find the jobs that you want to apply for. You hit submit, and then you cross your fingers hoping that they call you, because I know I would be perfect for that job. Let's just hope they see it. This is a little bit like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. You're going to get responses from companies that need to just have a body in that position, or they might not really know what they need you to do. So this tactic works. You might get a job, but it might not be the job that's best for you. So let's talk about your new job search flow. And Christine mentioned this as well. You want to do that personal inventory. Take some time to really reflect, do that internal check in terms of what do I want in an organization? What do I want in a job? What do I want in terms of the skill set that I'm able to utilize on a daily basis? Then you want to find those job descriptions, and you're going to use those job descriptions as your catalyst and your guide for updating your resume. Awesome. So, aligning your cover letter. I can say that all day and you can have an idea of what that means, but I'm going to actually talk about the how. So, how do I do this? How do I align the cover letter? Um, Going back to that job description and really using it as your guide. So, however your brain works best, whether it's printing out the job description, highlighting, making notes on it, or if your brain works best with digital, that's looking at the job description and having a separate repository for notes, whatever you need to do. What you want to do as you're looking at that is you want to look at all of the sections within that. Typically, when we're looking at jobs to apply for, we immediately jump to that requirements because those are the tangible things that they need in a candidate to do that job. So that includes specific, again, tangibles. How do I, like, what have you learned? So hard skills, soft skills. And that's what people really focus on. It's like what Christine was talking about in terms of if you meet 70 to 80% of those requirements, that's what people are looking at to see if they even feel comfortable applying for the job. But if you overlook and you don't give attention to the company overview and the responsibilities. Now, responsibilities are different from requirements in terms of responsibilities typically include those soft skills and those intangibles. So, how do you communicate? How do you work within a team? How do you problem solve? And then the company overview talks about their values, talks about their focus as an organization, and it can also help you understand how the position you're applying for fits into the overall picture. And so that looking at all of those aspects, you can really align it and really draw those connections between what you've done and then where you want to go. So don't just immediately go jump to the requirements. I mean, you can, but make sure that you're pausing it and backing it up a couple steps to really understand the true essence of the perfect candidate that they're looking for in that position. All right. So as you're looking through that job description, this is where that developing that repository for your notes in terms of paper, digital, whatever that looks like for you, you're really going to want to take note on those light bulb moments. So I know we've all experienced this where we're reading a job description, whether it's an entry level position or director position or anything, but we're reading the job description and we go, oh, I've done that. Oh my gosh, I did that in this job. So really write that down, write down the specific situation that made you go, oh, hey, I've done that. Write down the context of that situation because you don't just want to say, hey, I've done this. You also have to back it up with those metrics. So metrics are bringing in those numbers, showing how you actually performed. So if your goal was to increase engagement by 10%, you're going to bring in those metrics of this is what we ended up at, this is how long it took us to do that, because bringing in those numbers really solidifies how you will be performing in your job. And then you also want to take note of the results. So how your contributions impacted the business bottom line, the project timeline, the project success, project failures. I mean, we don't like to talk about our failures a lot, but if you're using those failures to grow, learn, and do better, then talk about how you utilized what you learned to be successful in the next phase. So writing those down as they come onto the top of your head, that's going to help you in developing your cover letter, but it's also going to help you in your interview prep, which is a whole nother conversation that we do not have time to get into, but you don't want to have to do double work. You want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success and not stressing out when you've already done this brain work and you've already thought through these processes. So again, going back to those tangibles and intangibles, Patrick mentioned that he looking at that people side of it, when he was convincing somebody that they wanted this beer or they didn't want this beer. You do the same thing in your job. You have to create buy-in. So how are you creating buy-in? What do you do? So those very specific scenarios that show people how you perform on the job. All right, so we've talked a lot about the theory of cover letters. Now let's talk about the actual application. Cover letters, they do not have to be a page and a half long. If they're a page and a half long, then you need to do some editing. Typically, cover letters, we're looking at a half page to 3/4 of a page. I like to break that down into paragraphs because everybody's perception of what equals a half page and what equals a 3/4 is different. So it's really got three main sections. Your opening, which is, I'm really excited to be applying for the position of blah, 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 that I saw posted on Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever it is. And like Christine said, if you can apply through the actual job application site on their website, please make sure that you're doing it that way because it does show more effort and more intentionality. And then after you have your opening, which if you have any connections to the organization, make sure that you're mentioning it there, but be very careful. Make sure that you know that your connection is a beneficial one and not one that makes people go, absolutely not. So after you have your opening, you have your body paragraph 1. And then paragraph 2, you can include an optional paragraph 3, and I'll go into body paragraphs, what those really look like in the next slide. But then you want your closing. Now, your closing, you should ask for the interview. And what that typically looks like is, I would love to be able to speak in person with how my skill set can benefit your organization in achieving their mission of blah, 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 which is where reviewing that company overview comes in really, really handy. I know a lot of people get uncomfortable doing that because it seems arrogant, but it's not. It's really kind of claiming it that you just want the opportunity to speak in person because that is where the magic happens. Hiring is still a people to people operation. Computers have not yet taken over the hiring process. So you have to be able to get in front of that person and show them who you are. The cover letters is a way to humanize you a little bit and separate you out from the rest of the crowd. But ultimately, the goal is to get that interview and be able to talk to them in person. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of those body paragraphs. Your cover letter is not just copy paste, reiterating what is already on your resume. You want to make sure that you are kind of holding back 2 to 3 scenarios that really showcase how you're going to perform the duties and responsibilities and requirements that they have of this position. And so you've already analyzed the job description. You've taken note of your past experience and how that fulfills what they're asking for. Your cover letter is your opening commercial. It's what's going to make them really engage more with your resume. As somebody that does a lot of hiring, when somebody gives me a cover letter, I read that cover letter and then it helps me have more context when looking at their resume. So if somebody tells me this is what I did in this position, this is how I did it, then when reading their resume, I can see how they would fit into our organization a lot better. Whereas if somebody doesn't include a cover letter, then I'm looking at their resume just like, okay, can they do this? Do I see this, this, and this? So whenever they can engage deeper with your resume, it really helps them put you in the, yes, let's call them in for an interview slot. So you're not just double doing what's on your resume. You're not just putting it on the cover letter. You have to provide that differentiation because then it just looks lazy if you don't. All right, so let's talk about final touches. So you've done all this work, you've spent all this time, personal inventory, analyzing the job description, writing your cover letter, you're getting ready to submit it. There are a couple things you really need to pay attention to. If you can avoid it, you want to avoid it at all costs. Do not address it to whom it may concern. Now, it's going to take a little bit of work and a little bit of research, but you need to address it to an actual person. If you can find the hiring manager or the manager of the department or program that you're going to be applying to, address it to them. If you can't find any of that information, address it to the head of HR. If you can't find that information, then what I typically do is I address it to the hiring team, or I address it to the recruiting team and hiring manager. Now, that sounds a little bit like to whom it may concern, but it's still more specific. To whom it may concern, again, sounds a little bit lazy, makes it feel like you don't actually want this position. You're just boilerplating, applying to everything that you might slightly qualify for. All right, so submission format. If you are applying on a job board or applying through the application link on that company's website, typically, just like your resume, it'll have a section for you to upload a cover letter. When you are uploading it in that way, you want to make sure that your cover letter mirrors the appearance of your resume. So same font size, same font type. There's a lot of templates in terms of how you should organize your cover letter online. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you have to make sure that it looks good as a standalone document if you're uploading it and then applying. If you are emailing your cover letter to a specific person, you are not going to just attach it as an attachment, just like you would your resume. The message, the email body message, that is your cover letter. So copy paste what you've written in that document into that email. That is your email message, that is your cover letter, and then you're attaching your resume and sending it on. Always include your contact information. Yes, they should have your resume. Yes, they should have your application. So they should have your email and your phone number connected to that. However, always assume that they will be disconnected. So when you are emailing your cover letter and resume specifically to a person, always put your cell phone number and your email address below your name. Same thing on the actual cover letter if you're uploading it as a document. Put your email address and your phone number under there, because that just makes it easier for that hiring manager to contact you. But in the event that your information or your documents get separated, they can still contact you without having to do a lot of research or work to identify how to call you or email you. And I mentioned this just a little bit ago, but appearance. A lot of people focus on the substance of the cover letter, which you absolutely should, but you also need to look at it as kind of like a picture. Is it weighted properly? Are there, and Christine mentioned this when she was talking about LinkedIn, don't do large blocks of text. Is it easy on the eyes? Can they read it? Would I enjoy looking at this cover letter? Because the first person to look at your application is typically not somebody that is super familiar with every single aspect of the department or program that you're applying to. Human resources individuals or professionals, they love human resources. They don't necessarily know everything that there is to know about being a front-end developer. So they are looking at it from an aesthetic perspective. They're looking at it from a writing perspective. They're looking at it from every perspective but what you would actually be doing in that job. That is what the hiring manager does, but it won't make it to the hiring manager unless that recruiter or that HR person feels it's worth forwarding on to them. All right, so we talked a lot about what you should do when you're getting ready to apply. This is a very long process, and so I want to give you some things to walk away with and some action items that you can do today, that you can do next week, and then what you should be doing before you apply to your next position. All right, so today, what you can do is do that personal inventory. Figure out what you want. What are you looking for? Really focusing on where are you going to keep all your notes, all your thoughts, and developing that process for capturing that information. Next week, you can start looking at the job descriptions that are posted for the job titles that you will be applying for. Get familiar with the verbiage that they're using. Get familiar with the skill set that they're going to be asking for and the knowledge sets that they're going to be asking for. They're not reinventing the wheel. organization to organization, and you will start seeing the trends and the typical requirements that are listed. So you can kind of really make sure that you're understanding what you have to put in your cover letter to fortify your resume and vice versa. And then finally, the next time before you apply, make sure that you are echoing the words that they're using some of the verbiage that they've mentioned. Make sure that you are really comfortable and happy with the documents that you are submitting, because it's the advertisement for you. They're not hiring people aren't going to call you in for an interview unless they feel confident that they're not wasting their time on seeing if you're a great fit for their organization. All right, so that is all that I have. I did not put my contact information on there, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am Erin Quinn on there, and then my email address is on there as well. Again, like I said, I love talking resumes and LinkedIn and all of this career development, career job search stuff. So always welcome to questions.